Hey Kathleen, so welcome to Seat of the Pants production on how to do a church service at the First Church. I say seat of the pants because I really haven't given this a ton of forethought, but I thought I would start off by kind of reviewing the equipment that you'd be using typically when you're doing a church service. Now, I have my own equipment, which is slightly different from the TV station's equipment. And since First Church doesn't own its own equipment, I imagine, at least in the short term, you'll be using the TV station's equipment, which you'll be picking up above the Alexis Pizza at 93 Main Street in the Belfast Community TV office. We will try to coordinate so I have the equipment set out for you, and I would just expect that we would make also arrangements either on Sunday or on Monday for me to get the equipment back. And so what is the equipment that you would be using? Well, first you've got the tripod, and then we've got the camera. And so just so you know the different things to know about, I'll kind of go over some of the basics. So let's look at this tripod first. What's nice about the tripod is that it's very relatively lightweight compared to some. And the way I both open and close it is, well, to close it at the end of the shoot, you see I just take these clips and I go whoop, and drop it down. And to bring it up to the right height, I typically leave it unfolded and sort of bring it to where I want it to be by unclipping it. And the nice thing about this tripod is that it's very easy to make sure that it's level, because what it has is, let's see if I can show it to you here, a leveling switch, a leveling thing here, which when you loosen this knob right here, then you can theoretically, let's see, it sort of makes the top wobbly, and there is right here, there is a bubble. And so all you need to do is loosen this and see that the bubble is in the level position, and then the whole tripod should be level. So I'm going to just set that up for us right now, see how quickly it goes. All right. So the camera is level, the tripod is level, and now let's get the camera. And you'll get the camera in the camera bag. It usually, I will try to have a charged battery in it, but there'll be extra batteries to, if you need to remove the battery, you can see that there's a button right over here that's the battery release, and you just kind of push it in and then lift it out, and here is the battery. To put it back in, you just stick it in and drop it back in, and it should click and work. So this is a nice little lightweight but very nice camera. Some of the things it records on SD cards, which are in the back here. This flips up here, and you can, by pushing it in, you can pull. You see they're very, very tiny little cards right there. And each one of them should record 8 hours worth of the video that we shoot. I should have it set up in the standard basic settings for you. But some of the other things that you'll want to know is to take the viewfinder out. The electronic viewfinder, you can of course look through here, but I often like using the flip out viewfinder. So that just sort of tucks in under here, and you just kind of pull it out and flip it up. Okay? Some of the other things that I make sure of when I use the camera is that I have the microphone set in the proper location. Typically I use both channels for doing the church service. I record the signal coming out of the house sound system. I usually put in channel 1, and then I have a second microphone. So here's by the way, you can see the microphone inputs. So channel 1 and channel 2. Channel 2, I typically put a shotgun mic that's aimed out at the, in the beginning at the choir and then toward the congregation. It's sort of my backup microphone, as well as not everything is properly mic'd, and so that's one of the things that you could concern yourself about. By the way, this camera has a servo zoom, or a zoom button like here, and it has a lot of the major function buttons are right here. Now, one of the things I'm going to try to, at least in the short term, remember to do these things, but I usually, here where it says counter reset. I usually zero it out, the counter, in the beginning so that I have a sense of how long the church service is going. This is all displayed on the screen on the camera. All right, so I think I'll go over a few more things as we get into doing this production. So the first thing you want to do is know how to properly put the camera on the tripod. And so you come in from behind and you press this red button here in. You make sure there's a knobby over here that you make sure that's nice and loose, and then it should just slide in. With a light camera like this, the balancing of the tripod is not such a big factor, but you do want to lock it in. So once you've slid it in and it's in position, you let loose of the red button and then you tighten it with this button here. So now you should be in pretty good shape. And this particular camera that I have, tripod that I'm showing you right now, doesn't have the back zoom control, but I'll show you that later. And remember, this is just sort of an overview for you to review. Hopefully I will at least take you through the process at the church a few times, but I thought this might be at least helpful. All right, so audio. All right, so typically you'll have this microphone here, the shotgun microphone, and there is usually a mic stand right in the little area where we do the recording, and you just set it in there, and then you have a little bit of a mic extension cord. Now I'm a little anal about how you wrap your cords at the end to put things away, because even though I try to be very careful about it, some of the people who have helped me have not been, and they just kind of like take the cords and go like this, which is horrible for cords. So I always ask people, if you're a sailor, to kind of coil it to go with the natural turn. There's a technique that I can show you, but I just want to make sure that you treat the cords with respect so that they don't get all weird looking on you over time. So okay, so I'm going to plug the shotgun microphone into the second input here. It just snaps in. There's a button up top here, and you just snap it in. And then I'll have this microphone going to on the mic stand, and it is actually a phantom powered microphone. What that means is that for it to work properly, it needs to get a small amount of electricity from the camera, which is actually a setting up top, which I'm going to put it in. But if you look for it, you flip up at the top here. There's a little thing here, and it says input 2, and I have it in the mic, and then I make sure that it is in that the mic is on and that the phantom power, it says plus 48 volts, is on. If you don't do that, the mic, there won't be any sound coming through. Now the other slightly more complicated thing is the house sound is kind of weird. And so I've had to, by trial and error, come up with a system that worked particularly well for it. And what I did was, you'll see this short little thing. It says padlock 10, and then it has a cord here. So this part plugs into the side of the camera, into input 1. And the other thing is for the cord that you'll find sort of coiled up on the floor in the pew area where we set up traditionally. What this does is the sound coming out of the board is too hot to be used well in just a mic input, but too low to be a line level input. So we keep the signal in the mic level, which is set up over here, and hopefully you don't have to touch this every week. I'll try to have this set up for you, but it's in the mic mode. Input 1 is in the mic mode, and then it's not in the phantom power, because it's getting its power through that. And now your audio should be set up. Now the other thing you'll need to do, you will be plugging in your special earphones or whatever it is that you use to hear better into this little top thing that has the symbol of headphones, but you plug them in here, and that should give you a good sense of the what the sound is like. And you will see an on-screen display of the level, and you want it to not be banging against the far end of it, sort of in the middle range. And you can control the volume with these knobbies here. I usually don't have to do a whole lot of adjusting once I get going. What's really nice is in the very beginning, before the service even starts, someone comes up to the mic stand and does some sort of pre-church announcements. I find that's a really great time to do my sound checks. Usually there's, for me, I've gotten used to the setup, and I just usually show up 15 minutes before the service, and it takes me about 5 minutes to set the camera up, and then I do my sound checks, and I'm even killing time there for about 5 or 6 minutes. But in the beginning, I'm sure you'll want to kind of get there at least a half hour ahead of time to make sure everything's going. And I'm going to try, at least for the first few, when you have to sort of try to do it solo, I'll try to be there as sort of moral support for you, but let you do everything. All right, so what have I done? You can do something that's called white balance. That means that the colors are all proper. If you aim at something white, usually there's somebody looking at their at the hymnal, and you find something that's white. You aim the camera, and it has to somewhat fill the screen, but not completely. And you hit this white balance. It says WB button right here, WB, and it goes through a process. But and I'll teach you how to do it. But you hit it enough times till it says auto white, and then you hit the next time and it says lock, and that's where you usually leave it. Anyway, that's so that the colors look right when we're doing the filming. So I'll show you, some of the zooming and panning and things like that. My general rule of thumb, or what I tell people, is that my goal is for people to not really be aware of the camera. If they start noticing the camera zooming in or doing things rather than what's happening in front of the camera, then I don't think I'm doing a very good job. So a lot of that has to do with being very subtle in your camera moves. But the fact of the matter is that you're a single camera doing the productions, and things are happening at different places. The choir is singing, or Joel is explaining things to the kids out front and stuff, and you do your best to just be smooth about it. That comes with practice, I think. But if I can just sort of communicate the zen of what you're trying to be as a cameraman or camera person, I'm sorry, using this sexist term, but the camera operator needs to be, or videographer, needs to be very subtle about their moves. So one of the things I try to do is make sure I test everything out before I get going. The next thing is the finished product is really just an hour long, and the services often last longer than an hour. So there are certain things that I usually don't record. I'll also tell you from a sense of privacy, I try not to zoom too much into individuals in the congregation. I do, during the hymn singing, try to go and get shots of the congregation, excuse me, at least a couple times, because I think that part of this is being done so that people who are shut-ins or who might be sick can watch the service, and oftentimes they're wondering which one of their friends and neighbors was at the service. So I do try to at least pan the congregation at least once or twice, but I try to be respectful of the fact that I think worshiping is somewhat of a private thing, and I didn't want to focus in too much on the individuals. So I pretty much stay with the officiants of the service. The other thing is that the idea, I never show when the collection is going around, or even there's hardly even know. I kind of eliminate all references to the collection. Partly the reason for that is that, again, the sense of privacy of giving money to the church seems like it should be sort of a private act. Anyway, it also saves some time. So when do I start? I typically start recording when the altar child, male or female, is walking up with the candles, when they're just getting ready to go up onto the altar. And then I will, follow it along. You see that I'll zoom out and see the officiant. Then I will, try to follow along in real time, not stopping anything, till what typically happens is that one of the celebrants will have a prayer, and they'll say, as we pray in silence. Well, I've discovered that if you make an edit at that point and then zoom out to change the angle, then what you can do is eliminate a lot of that silence. It turns out that when you're in the church service, that silence works perfectly well. But dead air on a TV program, well, we want to eliminate that somewhat. We still, I still leave about 5 or 10 seconds of silence, but not a whole minute's worth, which is way too much. So we save some time there. Depending on how long the sermon is or whatever happens to be going on, I'll decide when I'm recording the service whether I'm going to record. Oftentimes John Cameron plays an interesting song during the time that the collection is going on, and I may record that, but just on him and not showing the collection plates going around. Then I pretty much end when the final hymn. After the final hymn, usually they say that class is dismissed, or meet us in the vestry for cookies or whatever. And so that's pretty much it. So I probably have left a lot out, but I think I've included a bit too. So I hope this has been helpful to you. And again, I am there to show you more details in the process, but this should give you a taste of things. And until next time, happy filming.